I knelt beside the small, sniffling boy in the crowded mall, holiday music competing with the sounds of his quiet sobs. His dark curls fell across tear-stained cheeks as he clutched a stuffed dinosaur to his chest. "Hey there," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. "My name's Emma. Are you lost?" He nodded, lower lip trembling. "I can't find my daddy." "I'll help you find him, okay?" I promised, gently wiping a tear from his freckled cheek. "What's your name?" "Oliver," he whispered, clutching his dinosaur tighter. "That's a great name. And who's your friend?" I pointed to the stuffed toy. "Rex," he said, the ghost of a smile appearing. "Daddy got him for me." Across the mall atrium, I noticed a well-dressed man pushing frantically through the holiday crowd, his expensive suit contrasting with the wild panic in his eyes. Something in the desperate way he scanned the sea of shoppers made my chest tighten. Oliver looked up at me with complete trust, his small hand slipping into mine. In that moment, something shifted inside me, a feeling of purpose I'd never experienced before. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. My life had always been carefully constructed to avoid attention. I moved through my days like a shadow, attending classes at the community college, working shifts at Cornerstone Books, and spending evenings alone with novels that felt safer than actual relationships. My apartment was small but comfortable, filled with plants and books that never judged my quietness. That Wednesday had started like any other. I'd spent the morning shelving new arrivals at the bookstore, carefully arranging novels by genre and author while customers browsed around me, rarely asking for help. My manager appreciated my efficiency, if not my customer service skills. I preferred it that way, invisible but necessary. After my shift, I headed to the campus library to study for finals, but after 3 hours of economics formulas swimming before my eyes, I needed a break. The mall wasn't usually my scene. Too many people, too much noise, but I needed to find a birthday gift for my mom, and the thought of ordering online felt too impersonal. The holiday crowds were overwhelming. Christmas music blared from overhead speakers, and harried shoppers clutched bags while checking phones. I hugged the walls, slipping between groups, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest that came with too much stimulation. That's when I saw him, a small boy standing alone near the food court, clutching a stuffed dinosaur and looking around with increasing panic. People rushed past, oblivious to his distress. His lower lip trembled as he tried to be brave, but I could see the moment approaching when he would break down. Something pulled me toward him, despite my instinct to avoid involvement. My heart pounded as I approached, rehearsing what to say. "Hi there," I said, crouching down to his level. "Are you okay?" He shook his head, eyes welling with tears. I was looking at the toy store, and then Daddy was gone. "I'm Emma," I said gently. "What's your name?" "Oliver," he whispered. "Well, Oliver, I'll help you find your dad." "Do you remember what he was wearing?" Oliver's face scrunched in concentration. "A blue suit. And shiny shoes." He was talking on his phone. I led Oliver to a bench where we could sit together. He was remarkably composed for such a young child, though his small hand gripped mine tightly. "Do you like books, Oliver?" I asked, trying to distract him from his worry. His face brightened. "I love books. Daddy reads to me every night, even when he comes home late." "What's your favorite?" "The one with the dragon who's afraid of fire," he replied, making me smile. "That sounds like a good one. I work at a bookstore, you know." Oliver's eyes widened. "Really? That must be the best job ever." For the first time, through this child's eyes, my quiet existence seemed almost magical. "It is pretty great," I admitted. As we talked, I noticed Oliver's clothes, the quality of his small button-down shirt, the designer label on his coat. His dinosaur toy wasn't the mass-produced kind, but something special, handcrafted. This wasn't a family that shopped at discount stores. "My daddy works in a big building with his name on it," Oliver mentioned casually, swinging his legs. "He makes computers or something." I nodded, imagining some mid-level manager at a local tech firm. That sounds important. People are always wanting to talk to him, even when we're having fun. A shadow crossed his small face. That's why he was on the phone. He's always on the phone. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. Money and status clearly didn't shield children from feeling overlooked. Suddenly, a deep voice cut through the ambient noise. Oliver. Oh my God, Oliver. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit rushed toward us, phone forgotten in his hand. Oliver jumped up. Daddy. The man dropped to his knees, enveloping Oliver in a fierce hug, his shoulders shaking slightly. When he finally looked up at me, I was struck by the raw emotion in his eyes, relief, gratitude, and lingering fear. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. I turned around and he was gone. I've been searching everywhere. He was very brave, I said quietly, already backing away, my momentary role in their lives complete. Wait, he called, standing and straightening his suit. I'm James Davis. I can't thank you enough for looking after my son. The name registered vaguely. I'd seen it in business news or maybe on a building downtown. I mumbled something about being glad to help and turned to leave. Please, he said, reaching for his wallet. Let me. No, I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. I'm just glad he's safe. Oliver tugged at his father's sleeve. Daddy, Emma works at a bookstore. She knows all about books. James Davis smiled, his entire demeanor softening when he looked at his son. Does she now? It's just a small shop, I explained, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. Nothing special. She was going to help me find you even though she was scared, Oliver announced with a child's blunt honesty. James Davis studied me with new interest. That's real courage, then. I shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. The contrast between us couldn't be more stark, his confident stance and expensive clothes against my thrift store sweater and nervous posture. May I have your number? He asked, then quickly added, for professional reasons. My company is looking for someone with your qualities. I almost laughed. What qualities? The ability to talk to a lost child? But something in his expression seemed genuine, so I recited my number as he entered it into his phone. I'll be in touch, he promised. Thank you again for helping Oliver. As I watched them walk away, Oliver's small hand in his father's larger one, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride at having helped, certainly, but also a hollow feeling, a glimpse into a world so different from mine, one I would likely never belong in. 3 days later, I received a call from Davis Technologies, one of the largest tech companies in the state. James Davis wasn't just some manager, he was the CEO and founder. And he wanted me to interview for a position in their corporate communications department. My first instinct was to decline. The thought of working in a glass high-rise, surrounded by polished professionals, made my stomach clench with anxiety. What could I possibly offer a company like that? You have to take the interview, my roommate Lucy insisted when I told her, her eyes wide with excitement. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'd be completely out of place, I argued. I'm studying literature, not business. And you know how I get around new people. Lucy sat beside me on our worn couch. Emma, you've been hiding in that bookstore for years. You're brilliant with words, your essays, your stories. You just never let anyone see them. That's different, I mumbled. Is it? Or are you just afraid to be seen? Her words hit harder than she probably intended. Was that it? Had I built my quiet life not out of preference but fear? Still, when I called to decline the interview, the disappointment in James Davis's voice was palpable. May I ask why? He questioned. I'm not qualified, I admitted. And I'm not. I don't fit in corporate environments. Oliver hasn't stopped talking about you, he said, changing tactics. He said you made him feel safe when he was scared. That's a rare gift, Emma. I remained silent, unsure how to respond. Let me be honest, he continued. Our company struggles with communication, not the technical aspects, but the human element. We need someone who understands people, who can translate complex ideas into stories that connect. Oliver saw something in you that I recognized too. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, staring at the worn spines of my favorite novels. Stories had always been my refuge, but maybe they could be my strength too. That night, I pulled out a short story I'd written months ago but never shown anyone. It was about a girl who could only speak through written notes, but whose words eventually saved her town. Reading it with fresh eyes, I saw something valuable there, a voice that might be worth hearing. The next morning, I called James back and accepted the interview. The Davis Technologies building was as intimidating as I'd feared, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. My hands trembled as I smoothed my one good blazer, purchased years ago for a cousin's wedding. The receptionist directed me to the top floor, where James greeted me himself. "Emma, thank you for coming." His smile seemed genuine. "Before we start, there's someone who wanted to say hello." A side door opened, and Oliver bounded in, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Emma, did you come to work with my daddy?" "Maybe," I said, smiling despite my nerves. "I'm talking to him about it today." "You should," Oliver said with a child's certainty. "Daddy needs help with stories. He's good at making things, but not explaining them." James laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "Out of the mouths of babes." "He's right, though. That's exactly why you're here." The interview was unlike any I'd imagined. Instead of grilling me about qualifications I didn't have, James asked about my favorite books, why stories mattered, and how I would explain complex ideas to different audiences. "I brought something," I said hesitantly, pulling out my story. "It's probably not what you're looking for, but—" James read it carefully, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked up with something like wonder. "This is exactly what we're looking for," he said quietly. "The ability to find the humanity in complex situations. To make people feel something." 2 weeks later, I started at Davis Technologies as a communications specialist. My first day, I arrived early, stomach in knots, convinced I was making a terrible mistake. A familiar voice called my name as I stood frozen in the lobby. "Emma." Oliver ran toward me, followed by his father, who looked different today, less the imposing CEO and more a tired dad juggling a briefcase, coffee, and his son's backpack. "Oliver insisted on coming in early to welcome you," James explained, a hint of apology in his voice. "His nanny is sick, so he'll be with me today." "That's nice of you, Oliver," I said, genuinely touched. "I told Daddy you'd make his company better because you listen," Oliver announced. "Nobody listens better than Emma." Over the following weeks, I discovered things about James Davis that contradicted my initial impression. Yes, he was driven and demanding, but he was also a single father trying desperately to balance his company's needs with his son's. Oliver's mother left when he was 2, he confided one evening as we worked late on a project. She decided family life wasn't for her. "Some days I wonder if I'm doing any better with how much I work." "Oliver adores you," I said softly. "He talks about you constantly." "Does he?" James looked genuinely surprised. "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing him." "You're trying," I said. "That matters more than you know." Gradually, I found my footing at Davis Technologies. My ability to translate technical jargon into accessible language proved valuable, and my perspective as an outsider helped identify blind spots in their messaging. 3 months into my new role, I was asked to present my communications strategy to the executive team. Standing before the room of polished professionals, I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the urge to disappear. Then I saw James at the head of the table, nodding encouragingly. Beside him, in a small chair brought in specially, sat Oliver, drawing quietly but looking up occasionally to give me a thumbs up. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak, not with the voice of someone pretending to belong, but with my own voice. I spoke about the importance of human connection in technology, about making complex ideas accessible without condescension, about the stories that bind us together even in a digital world. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before James stood up. This, he said, gesturing to my presentation, is why perspective matters. Emma has shown us what we've been missing, the human element that makes technology meaningful. Later that day, James found me in the break room. You know, he said, leaning against the counter, when Oliver wandered off that day at the mall, I was terrified. But somehow, of all the people there, he found someone who would not only keep him safe, but would change our company for the better. I think he found me, not the other way around, I admitted. James smiled. Either way, I'm grateful. For both of us. 6 months after that day at the mall, James, Oliver, and I returned there together. Oliver held both our hands as we walked through the holiday decorations, pointing excitedly at the same toy store he'd wandered toward before. Can we look inside? He asked. I promise I won't get lost this time. Of course, James said, his hand brushing mine briefly as Oliver pulled us forward. Standing in that crowded mall, watching Oliver exclaim over toys while James laughed beside me, I realized how much had changed. I was still quiet by nature, still more comfortable with books than crowds, but I was no longer invisible, not to others and not to myself. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the smallest moments of courage, like kneeling beside a lost child and offering your hand. I couldn't have known then that I was also finding myself, but perhaps that's how life works. We discover our own strength in the moments when others need us most. As Oliver ran back to show us a book he'd found, his face alight with excitement, I thought about how we create our own belonging in this world, not by changing who we are, but by finding the places and people who value us exactly as we are.